Hi everyone, welcome to PSAT Prep Live, our free PSAT prep sessions here this weekend. My name is Boris, I'll be your teacher on camera, but before we go any further, do let me know in the chat how it's going. Let me just make sure that you're seeing me coming through live, and your sound works, and your keyboard works, and your computer didn't explode. Sai is asking, is this the continuation to yesterday's presentation? That's right. So we had session 1 twice yesterday, and we had session 2 twice today. This is the second one of those times. But if you're here for the first time, which I see from the poll many of you are going to be in for a treat. We're going to review some good math, reading, and writing stuff to help you do better on the PSAT. So good to hear from you, Sai, and some other folks coming into the chat. Let's go ahead and introduce our fellow teachers. I'm not the only teacher in the room. I'm joined behind the scenes by Nick and Jimmy and Steve and David, who are incredible teachers. So please don't hesitate to ask your questions in the chat, because they are PSAT instructors just like me and would love to help you. Also got to give a shout out to our tech wizard, Rich, behind the scenes. He's going to be operating the timers today, and he's also making sure that in general nothing explodes, or if it does, it doesn't explode too much. Hello, guest 116. Hello, guest 1601. Thank you so much for being here. I echo Jimmy's sentiments. We're very glad you all could make it today. Thank you so much for being here. Now, let's go ahead and get right to cracking. What we're going to do at the beginning is give you a pre-quiz. And this is a somewhat thinly veiled excuse to try to persuade you to get that PDF at the top of the chat. If you click on that link, it'll open a PDF in another tab. And this is a great resource. I recommend downloading it, even though for today you really only need it open in the other tab, because it has all the questions that we're going to do, some bonus questions that we're not going to do, all the notes pages, and make sure you don't miss this. At the bottom of the PDF is an answer key that has all the notes filled in from the slides, and then like explanations with all the scratch work for all the problems. So you actually have a way to review everything. All the notes that I'm going to put on the slides, you don't need to screenshot those, because those are going to be in the bottom of the PDF at the answer key. So make sure you grab that now. Now what I'm going to do is give Rich a request. Rich, if you'd be so kind, please give us a timer for 4.5 minutes. Folks, try 3 questions on your own. They're in the second, third, and fourth pages of your PDF. PQ1, PQ2, and PQ3. Try these 3 questions on your own and put your answers in the polls that David, who is our amazing poll master of today, has opened for you. They're in the bottom of the screen. They're like below the video player. So make sure you don't put your answers in the chat. If you do, we are not going to let them through. This is a moderated chat, so we're not going to let them through, but it's not because we're mad at you. It's just because we want to make sure that we keep the chat free of spoilers so that folks who are still working on the problems have a chance to do them and not already know the answer. Now we're going to get back to these questions later. Later today, you'll have a chance to try these same 3 questions again, and then see if perhaps a little bit of math review and some Kaplan strategizing helps you get them right the second time. And even if you get them wrong both times, that's fine. I will review them after the second time. So you will find out before the day is done how to do these 3 moderately challenging problems. Okay, that's all I got. Go ahead, Rich, please fire up that timer. I'll see you folks in 4.5 minutes. Good luck and enjoy practice questions 1, 2, and 3. All right, folks, welcome back. Again, we are not going to review these questions now, but we are going to see them later. So hang on to your hats. Let's go ahead and take a look at our first topic in math, which is how to isolate a variable. Now, I recommend that you check out the recording for this video or for this session in a day or two, where we'll be posting the recordings most likely sometime tomorrow. If not then definitely on Tuesday. And you can just go back to the PSAT Prep Live page at CapTest to see those recordings if you need to review this more thoroughly, and you can watch the video more slowly. But I'm going to assume for this session that if you're in 11th grade, you've had an algebra class, you know how to do the same thing to both sides and isolate a variable. What I want to do is to show you some of the main things the PSAT will do to make these questions look tough. So, very brief word on the fundamentals. This would be a few weeks in school, of course, and then I'll show you the strategy for the PSAT. Generally speaking, if two things are equal to each other, then you can do the same thing to both of them. Because if the two things are the same to begin with, like 4x and 4x are the same thing, and then you do the same thing to both of them, like if you add 7 to them both, then they'll stay equal. That's just common sense. If two things are the same and the same thing happens to them both, they'll stay the same. The catch for the PSAT is that the PSAT test writers will try as hard as they can to make it not obvious what you're supposed to do. Like, of the infinitely many things that you're allowed to do to both sides, which thing or things are particularly convenient? And I think that is the most useful little tidbit that I can share with you today. The most valuable things that you can do to both sides of an equation are eliminating fractions and eliminating parentheses. Even if you don't know how it's going to help you, just doing these two things to any equation that you see on the PSAT will very likely result in a really straightforward equation that you can solve with no sweat. So let me do one with you now to illustrate this, and then I'll give you some to try on your own, including one of the ones from the pre-quiz. So number 1 says, which of the following values of x is the solution to the equation below? So we're trying to find x. Information, of course, is that there's an equation with x's in it. Strategy step, let's do math. Now let me know in the chat, folks. If I wanted to get rid of fractions in this equation, what would I need to multiply both sides of the equation by? Guess 2598, by the way, is wondering if there's going to be a formula sheet. Yes, there is. On the PSAT and SAT there is. On the ACT there isn't. That said, we do recommend memorizing all the formulas on it so you can save time not having to flip back and forth from like the 4th page of the test to the formula sheet at the beginning. So here, there's a fraction, there's a half. To get rid of it, we can multiply through by 2 because the 2 will cause the half to cancel. There are other ways of solving this one, but very good, Tristan, very good. Guest Army, very good. And Cybri5, everybody. Let's multiply through by 2. So what's going to happen is, on the left, 2 times a half, poof, cancels. The fraction's gone. Then you're just left with what was in the parentheses, 3x minus 1. Now there's another parenthesis term. You'll have to multiply that by 2 as well. So it's going to turn from minus x plus 1 to minus 2 times the quantity x plus 1. And then my big mistake is I always forget to multiply the other side. So I have to really be careful. Don't forget to multiply that other side by 2 as well. 3 times 2, of course, is 6. So notice how we had a really confusing looking equation before with the fractions, but just by getting rid of the fractions, it starts to look a lot simpler already. Now let me know in the chat, based on what we just talked about a moment ago, what do you think would be a super useful thing to do next? What is your goal at this moment in your life as you're trying to solve this equation for x? Sai is wondering about the difference between the ACT, PSAT, and SAT. I don't want to take too much time talking about that because it is beyond the scope of the lesson, but for the record, the PSAT and SAT are really similar. Really, really similar. The SAT is just like a little bit longer and like a little bit harder, but otherwise they're the same test. So what you're doing here directly translates in every way possible to the SAT. All right, folks, here, good work. We got to get rid of those parentheses. We got rid of the fractions already. The parentheses need to be the next on our hit list. So 3x minus 1 doesn't change. Those parentheses were already gone. But now distribute that negative 2. Negative 2 times x is negative 2x. Negative 2 times 1 is negative 2. And so there you go. At this point, the equation looks very straightforward. If you've had any math classes in school, if you've done algebra, you can do this in your sleep. 3x minus 2x, combine like terms, that's x. -1 minus 2, that's -3. So now you just add 3 to both sides. X equals 6 plus 3, aka 9. Are we done? Yes, we are done. We got X, test makers asked for X. Cool, grab D for our amazing off-camera teacher, David, and move on with the PSAT. Ah, good job, guest army. Very good, Ella. Yes, distributing and condensing terms. Love that. It's exactly what you want to do. Okay, folks, so that's what you do. Don't try to plan out your whole life. When there's an equation, don't try to see the whole thing all the way down to the very end. Instead, just focus on how you can get rid of fractions and how you can get rid of parentheses. Do those things, and there's a really good chance the equation is going to turn out to be a lot simpler than you were thinking. Okay, let's try number 2. This one, though, all on your own. I'm going to give you a minute and a half for it. Folks, take 90 seconds and try this on your own. And when time is up, we're going to review it so you know how it goes. Good luck, and of course, enjoy the practice. All right, folks, welcome back. Let's go ahead and review this short answer question. We're going to start with the question itself. Test makers are asking for 3a. Information is an equation with a's in it. It's got parentheses, it's got fractions. Now let me know in the chat strategically, what do you think you should try to do first? Get rid of the parentheses or get rid of the fractions? By the way, a few folks are wondering, how do these grids work? You kind of have to bubble in your answer character by character. So if your answer were something like 5.2, you'd bubble in 5.2, like that. And then character by character, you would thus convey your answer. Your answer can't be negative, and if it's more than 4 characters long, it means something went wrong. That's the PSAT's gentle way of telling you to recheck your steps. So here, we need to multiply through by 8 to get rid of fractions. That's what we want to do. And the reason for that is that while you could distribute the fraction 3/8 and get rid of the parentheses that way, that would basically multiply how many fractions you have. We could do that. You'll still solve the problem and get the right answer, but it'll take a little bit longer. So be strategic. Get rid of the fractions first. Side by 5, everybody. A lot of you agreed on that. That's wonderful to see. So let's get to the bottom of it. So we multiply through by 8. If you're wondering why 8, it's because 8 is the smallest number that will clear out both an 8 and a 4. On the left, 3/8 times 8, well, that's just 3. The 8s cancel. On the right, a quarter times 8 is 2. Wow! Just that one step, and already this equation looks so much simpler. Now we distribute. 3 times 2a is 6a. 3 times -1 is -3. You can now add 3 to both sides. The animations show this. And by the way, all these animations, they're in the bottom of the PDF. There's like an answer key section, and it has all of the questions and all of the notes pages again, but with all of the animations filled in. So like the first time you see it in the PDF, it's blank. For practice, you can do it on your own. And then at the end, there's an answer key that shows you all this stuff. So 6a now equals 5. Divide both sides by 6, and you get a equals 5/6. Now, are we done? Is this our final answer? This is not the final answer. Oh, PSAT. Because the test makers asked for 3A, not A. Like, this is why it's important to have a method. This is why Heather taught you that method before. You have to make sure you do that final step and check to make sure you're done. That's not like a math thing. That has nothing to do with math. That's just being strategic. So whether you're a math wizard or a total mathophobe, do that last step. Am I done? Oh, no, I'm not. I need 3A. All right, well, multiply 5/6 by 3. That's 15/6. Now, those numbers both divide by 3. So when you divide them both by 3, 5 divided by 3 is 5, or 15 divided by 3 is 5, and 6 divided by 3 is 2, so it's 5 halves. You can bubble in a 5, a slash, and a 2, and move on with the PSAT. For the record, you could bubble in a 1, 5, slash 6, and you will get full credit, because as long as the value is correct and it fits into 4 characters, you don't have to simplify it. So just so you know, like if you did it automatically, that's fine, but for what it's worth, like putting in 15/6 or 5 halves, or even 2.5, all of those things are valid because they're the correct value at the end of the day. Okay, well, nice job here. Now, let's take a look at PQ1, which you did on your own earlier. David is going to bring up another poll for PQ1. I'm going to give you a minute and a half for it again. Try this on your own and see if it goes any more easily now that you know what to do when the PSAT gives you equations with fractions and parentheses. Good luck. Enjoy the practice in the next 90 seconds. All right, folks. Nice job on this question. On the second time through, let's go ahead and review. So first things first, the test makers do give you this like weird little hoop to jump through. They say that b equals 3/4 and they have a random b in the equation. Okay, we're just going to replace that with 3/4. That's not a thing. That's just like the test makers making it look a little bit harder than it is, but it's not actually any harder. They could have just given you this equation to begin with. In any case, let me know in the chat, what was the very first thing that you did to get one step closer to figuring out what z is all by itself? So here you again have a choice. You can distribute the parentheses to get rid of the parentheses, or you can multiply both sides of the equation by something to try to get rid of the fractions. Both are actually equally valid options. You'll have to do them both anyway, so it's totally fine whichever one you prefer to do first. The trickier thing is getting rid of the fractions. And so it's useful to notice that we can multiply this equation through by 4, because 4 is the smallest number that clears out a 2 and a 4. You could have also divided through by, or multiplied through by 8, and you still would have gotten the right answer. 4 is just the smallest number that you could have used. So if we multiply through by 4, here is what happens. In the left side, 4 times a half is 2. 4 times 5 is 20. And 3/4 times 4 on the right, well, the 4's just cancel, so that's going to leave us with a 3. So pause for a moment, digest. Oh, Cybri 5, guest army, very good, Kavya and Tristan. Nice work here, everyone. Sydney, wonderful. Finding what to do. Now, if you weren't quite sure, take a moment now, pause and digest. Make sure you understand why we chose the number 4. And then how we multiply 3 by 4. It's a very important skill, is multiplying both sides of an equation by something and correctly applying the multiplication to each one of the terms. Now at this point, we've got to distribute the 20 to clear the parentheses out. Always get rid of fractions, always get rid of parentheses. 20 times z is 20z, 20 times -1 is -20. At this point, you're basically done. 2z plus 20z is 22z. Add 20 to both sides to cancel the -20 on the left. So that's 3 plus 20 is 23, and divide both sides by 22 to get z by itself. Are you done? Yes, you're done. We got z equals 23 20-seconds. That is choice C for champions, and move on with the PSAT. Now, about a fifth of us, or I guess it's closer to like a seventh or an eighth of us initially, did vote for choice B, which flips them. That's fine. Don't beat yourself up if you make a mistake. It's better to make it now than to make it on test day. A lot of people just like really go hard on themselves when they make mistakes in practice, but if you make a mistake now, it just means that you are not going to make it on the test. So it's like being mad at yourself because you got a higher PSAT score after working real hard. That's not something you want to be mad at yourself for. That's the whole point, is you just got to make these mistakes now, because the only other time you could have made them was on the day of the test. All right, folks, great job here on PQ1. In your PDF, there's this challenge question number 3 as well. And remember, there is an answer key at the bottom of the PDF. So first, this is blank, but then once you do it and you want to review it, you can scroll down to the bottom of the PDF and find the answer key, which has all of our animations as well as the correct answer. Our next topic is translation. There's a really great table in your PDF in this section. And again, the bottom of the PDF has the answer key with this table filled in. These are keywords that translate into different mathematical operations. Rather than reading this table to you, let me go ahead and just do a practice example with you so you can see how this works, and then we can do some problems for some extra practice. Say you have to do a translation like this. 3y is 7 less than 6x. Okay, what most people do, and I know this because I did this too, is they look at the entire thing and they try to like beam in a translation in one step. And this causes headaches. Like I remember I'd be sitting there like, okay, so is it 3y minus 7 is 6x? Or wait, no, it's 7 less than it. So if it's less than it, that means if you add 7 to it, it should be equal. Adding 7 to 6x, and it's just like a pain in the butt. Don't do that. Instead, just translate one phrase at a time from left to right. One phrase at a time, left to right. And if you translate each piece correctly, you end up with the correct translation for the whole thing by the end of it. It's pretty awesome. Let's see how this works. Can you let me know in the chat, please, how do I translate just this phrase? 3y is. It is 3y equals. Because 3y is 3y and the word is means equals. And if you didn't know that is means equals, well, that'd be a good thing to review from the table at the bottom of the PDF that has all of the translations in it. Now, next we have this phrase, 7 less than. Let me know in the chat here, folks. How do I translate 7 less than? Oh man, so much participation. Hello, Aloe. Very good, Sydney. Nice, Tristan. Very good, Sai. Very good, everybody. Yes, Raksha. Very good. This is something minus 7. Now, if you put 7 minus something, it's fine. You know, it's a little trick to fall for. Better to fall for it now than to fall for it on the day of your PSAT. Nothing bad happened because you fell for it now. No one cares. No one's going to judge you. It's not going to hurt your life in any way. But it would have hurt your life, perhaps, if on the PSAT or SAT you had made it then. So good thing you made it now. The only thing left is this 6x term, so that is the thing that must go before the minus sign, and there you have it. Final translation, 0 headaches, 0 stress. It's just one phrase at a time, 3y equals 6x minus 7, and you've got it. Okay, there's a couple more drills on this page of your handout with answers at the bottom of the handout, but let's get into some in-format practice. I'm only going to give you a minute for this one on my computer. This one's a little bit quicker, but try this one on your own, and when a minute's up, we're going to review it. If you'd be so kind, David, please give us a poll for number 4, and I'll see you folks in a minute to review. Enjoy. All right, folks, welcome back. Now, this was an interesting one. Some people got it right, and they got it right really, really quickly. However, a lot of people weren't able to get an answer in a minute, and people voting later tended to get the incorrect answers more commonly. This is a bit of a sneaky problem, so let me show you a clever trick for it. This is something that I would actually use, because even though there is like a direct, straight-ahead math way of doing this, which isn't too bad, I like to do this trick just because it's a little bit faster and it's like less effort. You can eliminate on these problems very effectively and quickly come to the right answer just by elimination. Here's what happens. The test makers are asking you for the component of this formula that represents the cost per book per day. Notice that formula has 4 components to it, point 10, B, D, and 15, and each of them appears in one of the 4 choices. But here's the thing. 2 of those components already have a meaning. The question already tells you what they mean, so they cannot be the right answer. Let me know in the chat which 2 choices cannot be the cost per book per day, because the question has already told you that they are something else. Yeah, it says in the question itself that B is the number of books and D is the number of days. So neither one of them is a cost. They're both numbers, not costs. So you can eliminate choices A and B. And what's interesting is that A, alongside the correct answer, was a trap answer that got a lot of votes. Like basically for a while, anyone who didn't vote for the right answer was voting for choice A. But if you just do this clever elimination trick, then you can just cross off these 2 trap answers, and 2 of the most common trap answers on the test are gone just like that. Now, a lot of you are also crossing off 15, which I love to see. Yeah, it cannot be choice D. The reason for that is that the question's asking for a cost per book, but the 15 is not next to a variable. So if there's like 0 books, or 1 book, or 12 books, or 1,000,000 books, that 15 is just hanging out. It's just a 15. So that cannot be a cost per anything. That's just a flat fee. We're going to cross off D. The only thing that can possibly be left then is choice C, and you can grab it and move on with the test. Now you're thinking, oh, Boris, I just liked him a math genius and I looked at it and it made sense. Yes, then just pick choice C because you're a genius and move on. But if you don't see it intuitively like that, elimination is a fantastic strategy on this type of a translation problem. All right, let's take a look at number 5, if you'd be so kind. Try this one on your own. And David, please give us a poll for number 5. I'm going to see you folks in a minute and a half to review this question. So you know how it goes. Good luck and enjoy this practice. All right, folks, let's go ahead and review this problem, which was a little bit of a sneaky one. We have a basically tug of war between two choices with some spoilers for the other two. So let's get right to cracking. Test makers are asking, what's the rental charge Janelle's going to have to pay? There's a few different ways that you can go about it. Let me show you my personal favorite. It says that the first hour costs $10, and every hour after that is only $2. So one thing that you can do is say, okay, if Janelle rents the tiller for H hours, how many hours are there that she's going to get charged $2 for? Let's try just some numbers, right? Let me know in the chat, folks. If she rents it for 4 hours, let's say H is 4. How many hours is she going to get charged $2? Like, how many of those 4 hours will cost $2 per hour? Well, that's 3, because the first hour is 10, but then there's 3 hours left, right? 4 minus 1 is 3. So there's 3 hours that she's going to get charged $2 for. Okay, how about if she rents this thing for 12 hours? How many hours are there going to be that she's paying $2 for that hour? Guest 5434 is wondering, when am I going to be reviewing the English portion? That is going to be about 10 to 15 minutes after the hour, if the previous lesson was any indication. Very good, Guest Army. Very good, Cyan Kavya. Very good, Raksha. Yeah, so that's going to be 11 hours, right? Because the first hour was 10. Then there was 11 more hours to go to reach 12, and that's 11. And you can see how this goes. I mean, if she rents it for 17 hours, then there will be 16 hours in which she has to pay $2 per hour. So now, folks, the multi-million-dollar question. If Janelle takes it out for H hours, how many hours is she going to get charged $2 for? It's going to have to be H minus 1, because the first hour is $10, and then the remaining H minus 1 hours are $2 per hour. The correct answer's got to have an H minus 1 in it. It's just got to. A and B can go because they say H plus 1, just like that. And B had about 60% of the vote. But notice, if you just make this very simple observation that there's H minus 1 hours that are going to be charged $2 per hour, then B just can't be the answer. You can eliminate it without even realizing it's a trap choice on the caliber of getting 60% of your competitors to pick it. Now, between C and D, C got almost no votes. And if you picked C, good. Better now than on test day. You can cross this choice off because it has a minus sign in it. What? No. She's paying for that time. C says that her cost is being reduced by that time. No, the longer she's out with the power tiller, the more money that she has to pay. C makes no sense. And we can get D by elimination, basically. And we can grab it and we can skedaddle. Now, if you're a good math brain, you might be like, no, Boris, I don't want to do this elimination stuff. I just want to get it. Like, okay, it's 10 for the first hour. That's 10 plus 2 times how much? Oh, H minus 1. Great. And then you can pick it and move on, and that's fine too. But what I always love to show is that you don't have to be a math genius. You don't even have to like math. The answer choices are designed in such a way on most PSAT problems that if the math is some kind of kooky, difficult thing, then elimination will be a great way to go. Now, there's a few folks asking, why is it H minus 1? My advice, try H plus 1. It makes no sense. Like, if she rents it for 9 hours, H plus 1 means that she's being charged for 10 hours. Janelle's getting ripped off if you say H plus 1, because that means that she's being charged for more hours than she even had the thing rented. And that's why we cannot pick the H plus 1 answers, so we've got to stick with H minus 1. All right, folks. Nice job. By the way, there is a different question in the PDF. The PDF question's a little bit different. It's still correct. The choices have been modified to match what the PDF says. So you can try this problem again in the PDF, and you won't necessarily know the right answer because it has changed a bit. The answer key in the bottom of the PDF reflects that. All right, folks, nicely done. Now, I'm sure you're really, really excited to see that practice quiz question you had at the beginning. Again, I'm going to give you 90 seconds for it, just like you had it first. And when time is up, we're going to review it. So, David, if you'd be so kind, please give us our practice quiz 2 redo poll, and we'll see how it goes for you now that you've practiced a bit of translation with us. See you folks in 90 seconds. Hi everyone, let's review what's happening in this factory. So the question's asking for the total number of products produced. I don't know how many products machine A makes or machine B makes. It does say in the question that they make the same number of products. So let's just go ahead and say that like X is our number for the number of products produced at each machine, because they're the same. So we can use the same variable for both. Let's do translation. Let me know in the chat, folks. For machine A, how do I translate this phrase that $500 sets it up? Got a $500 fee to set up the machine. Well, that kind of suggests 500 plus something. Like, you could set up the machine and make a zillion products. You can make the machine leave and go play video games and do nothing. You're still out the 500 bucks no matter what. So that's the first translation. Then it says $100 per finished product. Let me know in the chat, folks, how do I translate that phrase that it's $100 per finished product? Nice job here, Raksha. Very good, Sydney and Jana. Very good guests. It's going to be 100x because we decided to let x be the number of products produced. Each one costs 100 bucks, so you multiply 100 by the number of products produced, and that's 100x. Now, machine B, if you understand machine A, follows a very similar pattern. So take a moment, pause, digest, make sure how you see how we got our translation for machine A. Now for machine B, it's the exact same thing, just with different numbers. It is $800 to set up, so it begins with an 800 plus, and then it is $70 per finished product. That's 70x. Notice I am using x again because it says in the question that they each make the same number of products. You can't assume that. If it did not say that in the problem, you'd have to use a different variable for each machine. But here we used x in both of them, and let me know in the chat, what do you do next after you finish translating the cost for each machine? Good work here, folks. Very good, Raksha. I see the guest armies out in full force. Fantastic. You set them equal to each other because it says that the total cost of a particular production run for each machine is the same. So we're basically trying to figure out what is the value of x that makes both machines cost the same. So we say 500 plus 100x equals 800 plus 70x. Now this problem's all about the setup. The test makers are testing whether you can read 5 lines of wordy math text and not panic. Because as long as you don't panic, you end up with this equation, which is not that big of a deal. Subtract 70x from both sides, get 500 equals 30x, or plus 30x equals 800. Subtract 500 from both sides. So 30x equals 300. This is actually quite convenient, because 300 over 30 is, of course, 10. Now, are we done? Is that our final answer? Well, a survey said we're split. We were kind of split 50-50 between choice B and choice D. And maybe if you picked B, you're sweating a little bit about that, because that's not the final answer. The test makers are asking, what is the total number of products produced? Oh, PSAT. So if you fell for it, it's not a math thing. Like, if you got choice B, it means you translated correctly, set up the equation correctly, did the algebra correctly, you solved this math problem. Obviously, if you can do that, you can multiply by 2. If you can find x, I guarantee that you can figure out what 10 times 2 is, and you know that that's 20. That's D for David, and we're going to grab it. We're going to move on with the PSAT. It's just a little trick. You got to make sure you're doing the Kaplan method and checking at the end, am I finished? Like 9 times out of 10, you are, and you do nothing. But in order to catch yourself the 1 time out of 10 that there is a trick, it has to be a habit all the time, because you can't just turn it on when you need it. It's got to be something that you're checking for every single time. So if you fell for it, don't be mad. Be delighted that you fell for it now, because someone who wasn't here is just that much more likely to fall for it on test day. All right, everybody, good job. In your handout, there's a challenge question number 6. I recommend that you try this one on your own. Together, let's move into our final topic, which is functions. And again, with functions, as before, I'm going to assume you've seen this in algebra class. Of course, I can't teach you functions in 15 minutes. This would be like weeks in a high school math class, but I do want to review the basics. So if you are reviewing the video, you at least have a chance, a resource that quickly explains what a function is, and you can go through it slowly and stop it and think about it. And I also want to show you the 3 main ways that the PSAT will try to make function questions tricky, and how to combat that, of course. So let's go ahead and begin our basic review. Function notation looks like this. F of x equals x squared. Of course, the other side's not always x squared. The key components of the function are the letter outside the parentheses. That's the name of the function, in this case, f. And the letter inside the parentheses, that's the input x. The stuff to the right of the equal sign is like instructions, what to do with the input to produce an output. Now, the key thing about functions is that these are all about substitution. So if the SAT is like, hey, what's f of 5? What that means is that you replace all the x's with 5s. Whatever the letter is inside the parentheses, you replace every instance of that with the number that's inside the parentheses in the question. So f of 5 would be 5 squared to parallel how f of x equals x squared. So that means f of 5 is 25. Let's try that again. Let's just say, for example, f of negative 3. Let me know in the chat, folks, what is f of negative 3 in this particular function example? Well, once again, we do substitution. We replace all of the x's with negative 3's. Negative 3 squared is 9. So f of 3 would be positive 9, or f of negative 3 would be positive 9. Okay, before I show you the 3 tricks that the test makers will use to make functions seem more challenging than they really are, let me go over 2 terms with you that you might see on your test: domain and range. Domain is what you're allowed to put into a function. In other words, it's what values x is allowed to be. Let me know in the chat, folks, what values is x allowed to be? In other words, what am I allowed to put into this function as an input? By the way, good question from Guest 220 and from Nina. Is there pre-calc on the PSAT? Nope. Is there calculus on the PSAT? Nope. None of that stuff. Just good old-fashioned algebra and geometry. So in this case, anything goes. Anything. Well, technically, if you want to be mathematically precise, any real value, but we'll just say anything to be simple about it. You're allowed to square any number that you want to. An example of a function with a limited domain would be something like f of x equals square root of x. Like, you can't stick a negative in there. So x would not be allowed to be negative for this function because you can't square root a negative. But other than that, in this case, anything goes. Range, then, is what you can possibly get out of a function. So let me know in the chat, folks, what could you possibly get out of function f here? Nice guest, Army. Very good, Raksha. Loving these answers in the chat. So the range, that's positive numbers and 0. The reason for that is when you square a number, you cannot get a negative. You can get 0, and technically 0 is not positive, so it's nice to put that in its own category, but that's the range. Positive numbers and 0 for this example where f of x equals x squared. Now, let's take a look at some ways the PSAT will try to be tricky with functions. I'm going to skip over the next question, number 7. It's a good one to practice if you really want the fundamentals of just like how to put an input into a function to get an output. I definitely recommend practicing it. And remember, there is an answer key at the bottom of the PDF. Together, though, let's try this scary thing. No poll for this one because it's short answer. I'm going to give you 90 seconds, though. Track your answer on scratch paper or somewhere on your computer. When 90 seconds are up, we're going to review. I'll keep a timer on my computer. You won't see it, but you will see me come back on when time is up. All right, everybody, enjoy the practice. I'll see you in a minute and a half. All right, everybody, let's go ahead and review question number 8. So here we see the first trick the test makers use to try to make function questions look more scary. And this is to stick functions inside of other functions. Now, a good trick on these is to just ignore the stuff on the outside. I'm going to kind of scratch it off and just pretend it doesn't exist, leaving only the middle, d of 2. Oh, hey! I can do d of 2. That's not a problem. Let me know in the chat, folks, what is d of 2? Remember, make sure that you plug a 2 into the correct function, d, not c. In function d, replace all the x's with 2's. So it goes from d of x is x squared minus 5x plus 6. It becomes d of 2 equals 2 squared minus 5 times 2 plus 6. Now 2 squared is 4. 5 times 2 is 10. So it's 4 minus 10 plus 6. That's negative 6 plus 6, which is 0. Not the final answer, though. But what you can do is you can replace d of 2 with a 0, right? Like if you just found that d of 2 equals 0, why bother writing that annoying thing, d parenthesis 2 parenthesis all the time? If that equals 0, just write it as a 0. It's much simpler, and they are equal, so you can use them interchangeably. Now, if we get rid of the scratch-offs, the problem now looks like c of 0. Oh, okay, well, c of 0, sine by 5 here, folks. I can find that in function c. Replace all the x's with zeros. 2 times 0 is 0. 0 plus 3 is 3. Are we done? Yes, we have found c of d plus 2, or d of 2, also known as c of 0. Bubble in a 3 anywhere in the grid, and move on with the PSAT. All right, folks, nice work. So that was one trick the test makers use to try to make function questions hard. The next trick they use is one that you've seen before in the pre-quiz. Oh, here it is, PQ3 again. I am going to give you a minute and a half. Try this one on your own. See if you can translate the table presentation of the function into how you know functions work. And I'll review it in a minute and a half if it's still confusing. So good luck, enjoy the practice. See you in 90 seconds. All right, folks, let's go ahead and get to the bottom of this thing. This one actually also has the nesting, so it's actually 2 tricks in one. Again, mentally block off the thing on the outside and focus on the middle. Hey, g of 1. Okay, well, I'm not given a function for g. I know that there exists a function, g of x, and it equals some stuff. I don't know what that stuff is. The PSAT didn't tell me. But here's the thing. This table does tell me something about the function. It has 5 rows in it. If we say the top row is row 1, then 2, then 3, then 4, then 5 is the bottom row, let me know in the chat which row are you particularly interested in for the purposes of solving this problem. For this problem, we want that 3rd row. Why? Because it has a 1 in the x column. What the table is basically telling you, in effect, is that g of 1 equals -1. I don't know what happens. I don't know what function g does to a 1 to turn it into a -1, but that's what the table says. So if you didn't know that, good. Better now than on test day. Now you know. I've written next to the table a translation of the table. There's a function g of x. You don't know what it is. But each row in the table tells you what function g of x equals for a particular x. Like, to be very specific, when x is 1, g of 1 is -1, apparently. I didn't know that. I don't know why that's true, but that's what happens. Now, are we done? No, we're not done. That's g of 1, but this was a nested function to begin with, so remember what you do next. You say g of 1, I don't care about that. I don't want g of 1. I want a negative 1. I want to put a regular number in there. I don't want to be dealing with any more letters. No thanks. So now the question reads like this, f of negative 1, and we just repeat the process. This time we're looking at the function f table, and I want my input to be negative 1. Again, that is coincidentally the third row. And coincidentally, it ends up flipping from the third row in function g. This is purely coincidental. Again, let me translate what this table is saying. There is a function, f, and I don't know what it is. It's a bunch of stuff. It's a total mystery. But according to the table, when you stick a negative 1 in place of the x, when you replace all the x's with negative 1s, it ends up giving you a 1 as the final value. And that is the final answer. It's choice D for David. Grab that choice, confirm it, and move on with the PSAT. So on this one, overwhelmingly, you folks picked choice D, which is great. There was some love for choice B and for choice C. C is the choice you get if you stop too soon and don't plug g of x into f of x following the nesting thing. Now, choice B is a bit of an interesting one. This might have happened if you worked backwards. If you went from 1 to 0 and then plugged in 0 and worked from 0 to negative 2. However, that's mistaking and flipping the input and output columns. X is the input column, that's what goes into the function. G of x is the output column, that's what comes out of the function. So if you made that careless mistake, good, better now than on test day. You can easily just do the exact same thing you did now, only flip the order, and you'll get the right answer on test day, because you clearly understood how the logic works. Okay, everybody, there's one more thing I gotta show you for functions. We've seen nesting, we've seen wacky tables. The third and final thing I'm going to show you that the PSAT uses to try to make functions harder is real world values in a table. So I'm going to give you this question, number 11. Oh man, this question looks like the beginning of the end times. It's huge text, giant table, tons of letters in the choices. Do not panic. Never, ever, ever panic or tense up or get frightened by a PSAT question. Your attitude's got to be, oh, the harder it looks, the less hard it probably actually is. The test makers work really hard to make easy questions look difficult. They also will sometimes ask really hard questions that look simple. Like, oh, this is like a lamb in wolf's clothing, and this is like a wolf in lamb's clothing kind of thing. The animals never wear their own clothing. So don't panic. Just take a deep breath. Start the steps of the Kaplan method. If you can do it, well, great. Good thing you didn't waste time panicking about it for no reason. And if you can't do it, then skip it. On test day, you should skip questions you can't do. What's the point of spending time not getting any points? That doesn't make any sense. Swallow your pride, put your ego to the side, skip questions you can't do, get all the questions that you can do, and then maybe see about getting to some of the ones that you skipped. All right, that's enough jibber jabber. I'm going to give you 90 seconds. Try it on your own. Good luck. David, if you'd be so kind, please jump ahead and give us a poll for number 11. I'll see you folks in a minute and a half to review. Good luck. Hey team, let's go ahead and get to the bottom of this. So one thing I want to note about these questions is that sometimes the functions are different and sometimes they are the same. In fact, if you look at the PDF, question number 12 has answer choices that are all the same. What I'm about to show you works for the questions in which everything is the same. Basically, if all the functions are the same in the choices, the letters are all the same. You just immediately skip to the second step of the procedure I'm about to show you. However, if they are different, that means that there's an additional challenge to the problem, which is to figure out which configuration of letters should it be. Should it be f of p? Or should it be p of f? Now let me know in the chat here, folks, which way makes sense. F of p, which suggests that the fees depend on the number of late payments, or p of f, which suggests that the number of late payments depend on the amount of money collected from fees. In the chat, please let me know, what do you think is the more logical way of writing those letters? Here, it's got to be f of p. And if you're like, wow, but why is that? Think of the alternative. P of f implies that first, someone's coming at you with earnings from late fees. Like, hey, I got $175 here. And then after that, you're like, now how many times should I pay my rent late? 7. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So basically, like, you're living life and failing to pay rent on time. The more often that you don't do that, the more money that you have to pay your landlord. That's what actually makes logical, real world sense. So choices C and D need to go bye-bye. And if you picked them, good. Now you see how you can quickly and easily cross them off if there's a similar question on test day. Whenever you see that there's letter switching in the choices, think about what logically makes sense, and one of the two options, I guarantee, is going to be ridiculously silly. Now, the second step, which you would do immediately on a question like number 12, which is next in the PDF, if they're all the same to begin with, is just trial and error. Folks, take advantage of the format of the test to take the test. In a high school math test, you'd have to derive the function yourself. Why bother when the test makers have given you options? Take like the easiest freaking row, like 2, that's an easy number, and just plug and chug. If you plug in a 2 to choice A, 25 times 2 is 50. And if you plug in a 2 into choice B, 25 plus 2 is 27. Well, the answer's supposed to be 50. It says so in the row. So it's not B. Don't check any more rows. You're done. Your attitude on test day should be, I'm a PSAT god. If I think that B, C, D are wrong, they are wrong because I'm awesome. End of story. That leaves A. Grab A for action, Jackson, and move on with the PSAT. So you can practice that again on question number 12, which is a great one to practice on your own. And remember, always the answer key. Scroll down to the very bottom of the PDF. It has all the slides with all the animations and the correct answers circled. Okay, folks, we've made it past an hour. Let's take a break. If you'd be so kind, Rich, please give us a 5-minute timer. Folks, take 5 minutes to stand up, stretch, relax, and of course, enjoy life. And when 5 minutes is up, we're going to come back and work on verbal. So I look forward to that. I hope you have a chance to get away from your screen for a little bit. We'll see you folks in 5 minutes. Welcome back from the break, everybody. In our final 45-ish minutes, let's take a look at a little bit of reading comp and a little bit of writing and language. So for reading comp, we are going to focus today on the question strategy because in session 1, we go over the passage strategy. That being said, we've got to practice the passage strategy first so you can reinforce that if you've been to session 1 or if you will learn it in a bit when you check out the recordings that go up tomorrow for session 1. And then we'll have some questions to work with. The big picture, which I'm going to summarize very quickly, is that when you read a passage, your job should be to annotate it and not to try to learn it, not to try to memorize all the details. You can look up details later if questions come up that require you to understand them. Now, because this is session 2 and theoretically you've seen the passage strategy in session number 1, let's go ahead and let you do this on your own. I'm going to give you 30 seconds. You won't see a timer, but it is counting down on my computer. Take 30 seconds, read the opening blurb, read the first paragraph, and think about what you would annotate for this passage. I'll ask you that when time is up on my computer. See ya in half a minute. All right, folks, let's go ahead and review. One of the first things that you want to do when you read the blurb in the opening paragraph is identify the topic of the passage. Let me know in the chat, folks. What did you think was the broad subject of the passage that you just began to read? It's worth noting the blurb of a passage is not always useful, but sometimes it is really useful. And in this one, it is so ridiculously useful. It tells you that the passage is about Black Monday, and not only that, but the causes and effects of it. Now, this first paragraph doesn't really talk about the causes or effects of Black Monday. It just kind of introduces you, Aloe, to the 1987 plummet. Guess 1740 calls it the stock market drop. Perfect. So we'll just make a little note here. Black Monday, stock market 1987 drop. And then, if a question asks you for like general background information, this will be the paragraph to look at. Okay, then let's take a look at the next paragraph. It's a big one. I'm going to give you a minute to read this one and formulate your annotation. When time is up, we're going to review. And if you're like, whoa, oh my God, I'm out of my depth. I don't know what's going on here. Boris keeps asking me to read stuff and annotate. What's that? That's what we learned in session 1. So session 2 is today. If you haven't seen session 1, no worries. If you go back to the Kaplan PSAT Prep Live page, there will be recordings posted tomorrow or Tuesday, and you can check all the sessions that happened, including session 1, which will be a nice complement to this one, which is session 2. Okay, see you in a minute to review your annotations. Okay, folks, let's go ahead and review this paragraph. Let me know in the chat, what did you annotate for paragraph number 2? This paragraph talked about some causes. which you could kind of guess what happened because the opening blurb did say causes and effects of Black Monday. The better that you can anticipate what's going to happen, the more likely it is that you'll be able to stay focused and not become afraid or zoned out by the technical information in the problem. Here, the author mentions a couple of causes. You might have noticed what Guest 2588 noticed, which is that rapid growth fueled this crash. You might have also noted that globalization helped to create this crash by intertwining all the markets. Now, you don't need both of these things, but as long as you got that this paragraph was exactly as 4137 said the causes of Black Monday at a minimum, that's good. You're good to go. And you can look up the details later as needed. All right, and by the way, Cyber 5, I just love to see how many of you are posting your annotations in the chat. Like, I know it's weird, this annotating stuff, the first time you see it, first time you try doing it, it doesn't feel natural, but I promise you with practice, it will be the most natural thing in the world, and being able to do this helps you be like a zillion times faster on test day. People think that the key to success is to read faster, but reading faster without comprehending any better is not actually going to help your score. Like, I've tutored students many times over the years, and we're just sitting there doing a problem, infinite time, no time limit. People get questions wrong. The questions are hard. It's hard to understand the text. So you have to improve your comprehension, and that's how you do it, is by annotating and focusing on the big picture instead of trying to memorize little details. Okay, let's do 2 paragraphs in one. I'm going to give you a minute and a half to read these 2 paragraphs. Take your time, think about each one, annotate it, get the big picture of it, and then when a minute and a half is up, we're going to review both. Good luck. Hey folks, let's go ahead and review. We're going to start with this paragraph that I'm bracketing in purple. Let me know in the chat, folks, how did you annotate that paragraph? I saw Guest 2588 get a good one in at the beginning. Cyber 5, my friend. Yes, signs that hinted at the crash. So there was a warning. I mean, in retrospect, hindsight's 2020, hey. I really am sad that a global pandemic took over 2020 before we could really get to work with the 2020 vision puns that year would have produced under normal circumstances. So hindsight's 2020, but in retrospect, it does seem like there was some warning signs that would show this crash was going to happen. What's interesting is that you don't need to know what they are. It doesn't really make any difference what they are. If a question asks what they are, then you can look them up in this paragraph, but if no question ever asks, you never ever have to care. Now, we have some other great annotations. Guest 1740 called them warning signs. Phenomenal paraphrase. That would have been fantastic as well. Jaina had warning signs as well. So you guys doing a great job. That's what you want to be doing, is just getting the table of contents kind of outline for each paragraph, and then you can look up details as needed or never care about it again if no question ever asks. Okay, now the next paragraph, this is just a bunch of stuff that happened before the crash. So stuff before crash. And you could have made a more specific note. You could have said like, well, this was like foreign market activity before the crash. That's also totally fine. The important thing is this is kind of like the build-up. It's the build-up to the crash. And then we get to this paragraph. Take about 45 seconds, read it, and I'll ask you what you would annotate for this one. All right, folks. What was your annotation for this paragraph? This paragraph was the big day. Aloe called it panic within the setting. Yes, like Raksha, the rising action. Oh, it's so tense. Yeah, so this is like the day of the crash. So we can make a lot of different kind of notes for this. I love Aloe's here. Panic! There was just mayhem and madness on the day of the crash. And the paragraph does indicate that, it was not a long-term thing. Within a couple of trading sessions, everything was fine. And less than 2 years later, we were at all-time highs. So like everything was fine. But on the day, there was definitely panic. And that leaves just one more paragraph. And folks, let me know in the chat before we even read the paragraph, what do you know does this paragraph have to have in it? This is like a good example of anticipating the passage. What must there be in this paragraph? This better have some effects, because the opening blurb promised causes and effects of the crash. So far, I've seen nothing but causes. So we need to have some effects here. I'm going to give you a minute, read through, annotate, and then we're going to review when time is up. See you in a minute. All right, folks, let's go ahead and review. We had some effects here. Let me know in the chat, what form did the effects take? I saw guest 5434 talking about effects. A lot of you said effects, which is great. You can definitely make that note here. Aloe calls it the aftermath, also totally fine. If you just wrote effects, fine. It doesn't matter what the effects were. You don't need to understand them. If no question ever asked, you never have to care. Now, if you happen to catch that it was really all about different kinds of like regulations or like these like mechanisms that change what people are allowed to do, that's great. And you can make a note for that as well. You're allowed to. But at minimum, as long as you got that this was like the consequences of the crash, you're good to go. So big picture of the passage, it was about the causes of Black Monday itself, and some of the consequences of this crash. Now you can go to the questions and start picking up confident answers. Before we do that today, though, we do need to get into the main topic of today. This is the question method. And it's a really important page in your PDF, so I'm actually going to tell you what it is. Make sure that you study page 33, which has the question method, because you should be using this on every single reading question from now until forever, just like you should be using the passage strategy on every single passage. So here's what you do. In step 1, you unpack the question stem. That just means figure out what the question's asking and try to see, like, hey, where am I going to research the answer to this? What you deduce from step 1, you'll feed into step 2 and go do some research, trying to figure out the answer. That prediction is step 3 based on your research, and then you use the prediction to find the one correct answer. I just want to say this because it's a common but incorrect belief. People feel like there's multiple right answers on the PSAT and that you have to pick the best one. No, there are no best answers. There are no good answers and better answers. There's one correct answer, and the other 3 are all objectively bad. They're all objectively wrong. So don't argue with the test. Okay, don't waste your neurons on that. Let your competition whine about how the test is not fair. It's fair. Some geniuses make sure it's fair. There's one right answer. The other 3 are wrong. So focus on finding the one correct one. And if you're stuck between 2, see like how you can prove one to be wrong. It must be possible to prove every wrong answer is wrong based on the passage in the question. Now, this is one path to solving a reading question. However, there may be what are called open-ended questions. Something like, the author would most likely agree with which of the following. Right, that's very open-ended. It doesn't give you much to go on. Anything in the passage is fair game. If that happens, then you can't really make a prediction. So you take an alternate approach just from step 1 to step 4. You say, okay, unpack the question stem. Oh, there's nothing to unpack here. Time to go to the choices and compare them to the passage to see which one works. Okay, let's do some questions together. And then we're going to wrap up today with some writing and language practice. So question number 1. The passage is primarily concerned with. Well, step 1, clues. It's the fact that you're asked about the primary concern of the passage. Let me know in the chat, folks, what must be in the correct answer? Like 100%, absolutely, positively must be in the right answer, or else there's no way that choice is a primary concern of the passage. Black Monday needs to be in the answer. It's got to be there. If the answer choice does not have Black Monday in it and does not in any way refer back to Black Monday specifically, it's wrong, because clearly the main point of this passage was that specific event, the Black Monday stock market crash. Okay, so other than that, not much we can really say here. Take a look at the answer choices. Go ahead and vote in the poll. For the answer choice you'd pick on test day, provided by our amazing off-camera teacher, poll master, David. Nice job here, folks. Just great job. Choice A, no Black Monday. Choice B, no Black Monday. Choice C, no Black Monday. They all sound like they're talking about the kind of stuff the passage talked about. These choices are designed to trip your familiarity. Like, oh, that sounds familiar. But you gotta trust in your prediction. The only answer choice that refers to Black Monday, which was a stock market crash, is choice D. Grab it and move on with the PSAT. Bada boom, bada bing, bada ding dong ding. You're done. Let's try question number 2. Now, question number 2 is part of what we call a command of evidence pair, meaning it is a question that has a command of evidence question coming after it. If you happen to notice that on test day, it's convenient. You don't have to, but if you happen to notice it, it's nice because you can then really pay attention to how you got your answer and then immediately answer the command of evidence question in about 2 seconds. Let me show you how this works. So number 2 says the author would most likely agree with which of the following statements about insert topic of the passage here. Okay, there's not anything to go on in this clue or in this question. There's no clues because it's about the entire passage. Like the whole passage was about the crisis and its effects. So when you get an open-ended question like that, there's not much you can do except go to the choices and do some elimination. Again, if it's possible, it's good to make a prediction, but some questions are too open-ended for you to make a specific prediction because they can come from too big of a chunk of the passage, and then you gotta just check the choices as you go. So let's try choice A. There were no real consequences to investors of the market following the stock market crash of 87. Hey, let me know in the chat, folks, is that true? Were there no real consequences after the stock market crash? Yeah, that'd be kind of weird considering there was an entire paragraph about the consequences of this crash. It was the last paragraph of the passage. There's no way that it's choice A. So choice A needs to go A way. We're going to cross it off. Okay, let's take a look at choice B. Globalization of financial markets has had a mostly negative effect on modernized financial industries. And that's an interesting one. We definitely had a paragraph about globalization leading up to the crash. I'm not saying that B is wrong. Okay, but let me know in the chat, what is a word in choice B that we should be careful and check rather closely? Sniper high five. Love the enthusiasm. No! Yeah, very good, folks. We have this word mostly. Now, mostly means more than half. So we look back at the passage. Did it say that in that globalization and causes paragraph that the effect of globalization was more than 50% negative? You have to be a little bit careful here, folks, because what a lot of people do is they go, oh, so I should just always eliminate extreme choices with words like mostly and always and never. No, extreme answers can be as right as any other answer, but if there is an extreme answer, it needs to have extreme proof. And here we do not have specific proof in the passage that allows us to make this quantitative deduction that the effect was more negative than positive. So choice B is extreme and wrong. We got to cross it off. Choice C. In retrospect, the signs of an impending financial crisis in the days leading to Black Monday were somewhat obvious. Let me know in the chat, folks. Does the passage suggest that it was somewhat obvious that there was going to be a crisis? We had a whole paragraph about it. Remember this paragraph? Signs hint at crash. Some of you annotated this as warning signs, which is great. If you put warning signs in your notes, I mean, you are rock and rolling. You're definitely, no hesitation, gonna grab answer choice C. So we're gonna go ahead and grab that choice, confirm it, and move on with the PSAT. For the record, choice D says, financial experts should study human and computer viruses. That's, again, one of those choices where it's like, oh, I remember it saying something about viruses. But that wasn't the point of the paragraph. It was just a simile. It was not actually like indicative of what we're supposed to be doing to prevent crashes in the stock market. So D doesn't make any sense. We're going to cross it off. Now, we know the next question is command of evidence. So now what we're going to do is look back in the passage and be like, all right, what specifically indicates that there were somewhat obvious signs that there was going to be a crash? And that is the beginning of our warning signs paragraph. So in the command of evidence question coming up, we'd love to see lines 32, 33, and 34 that say clearly There were portentous signs. You look at the answer choices for number 3. Do we have these magic lines? We do. And you can just grab choice B for Boris and skedaddle. It's pretty cool. Command of evidence questions are a bugbear for a lot of students, but they actually can be the quickest questions on the test. You determine based on your previous problem what you'd like to see in the right answer. You see it, you pick the choice, you move on. Or let's say, oh, something went wrong. Oh no. Okay, fine. You skip the question. Something went wrong. You skip it. You move on. What a lot of people do though is they'll actually read all these lines. They'll actually like dutifully go look up all these line references and read them and go, does this prove it? That takes forever. And then people think, oh, these questions are so hard. No, they're not hard. You just got to make sure that you don't do useless things. Do not read the lines. They don't help. Figure out what lines you want to see and then pick those lines. That's the prediction step, showing its value in the Kaplan question method. All right, folks. Nice job. Very good work here. There's more questions. We gave you the full passage, all 10 questions for passage 1. There's also passage 2, a full passage with all 10 questions for that passage. So there's actually like a lot of reading comp practice. And remember, the answer key is at the bottom of the PDF. So definitely try the passages on your own first. Passage 2 in particular is really, really challenging. And then review them with a key at the bottom. All right, folks, we're going to cool down a little bit with some writing and language practice. This is grammar themed. So along the way, we'll learn a little bit of grammar on the PSAT. We're going to start with question number 1. I'm going to give you, let's say, 45 seconds to read this paragraph and answer question number 1 in Pollmaster David's poll. When time is up, we're going to review it. So good luck, everybody, and of course, enjoy the practice. All right, folks, let's go ahead and review question number 1. So here it's worth noticing that we've got this little bit that I'm highlighting, and that's what's replaced in every choice. Every choice agrees it should be himself, but then we have comma and, a so, a comma although, and a semicolon, however, comma. So what you can do is look at the highlighted portion and look before it and after it and say, hey, are these complete sentences? So let me know in the chat, folks, is there a complete sentence on both sides of the highlighted portion? Oh yeah, that's a complete sentence on both sides. A century later, King Louis popularized the form by dancing himself. That's a complete sentence. And then after it, we have his love of ballet elevated from blah to blah. That's a complete sentence. So we got to make sure that we don't pick a choice that is not a legal way of connecting two complete sentences. And if you didn't know this rule, don't worry. I'm about to teach you what it is. So let me know in the chat, folks, which choice or choices can we eliminate because they are not valid ways to connect two complete sentences. There's actually just one. Only one answer is an invalid way of connecting two complete sentences, and that is choice B for Boris, or I guess in this case, B for betrayal. We're going to cross it off. Here's the deal, folks. In English, we have these 7 words called fanboys. This is an acronym and a mnemonic to help you remember for, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. These are the words that together with a comma can connect two complete sentences. The way it works is that you have a complete sentence, then a comma, then a fanboy's word, then another complete sentence. So for example, it is nice today, so I will go for a walk. It is nice today, complete sentence. I will go for a walk, complete sentence, comma, so. Comma, fanboys connecting two complete sentences. Now, choice B has a fanboys word without a comma, so we're not going to pick it. If it had a comma, that would have been okay, potentially. Now, choices A, C, D are all valid ways of connecting two complete sentences. So unfortunately, we have to do something else in step 3 after we do our elimination in step 2 to figure out what's going on. Now here, luckily, there is a very clear pattern going on, which is that C and D both offer contrasts. These two clauses are not contrasting, though. His love of it and his popularization of it, those things work together. There's nothing weird about the fact that his love elevated it when you consider the fact that he popularized it by dancing himself. So we're going to cross off C and D. Contrast makes no sense, and the answer is choice A. Grab choice A for awesome. Move on with the PSAT. By the way, folks, remember that choice A is no different than any other choice. Don't treat it any differently. You're a PSAT god if you think it is choice A. It is choice A because you're awesome, end of story. We had a student one time who reported that on her PSAT, there were 4 no changes in a row. And she picked it no change 4 times in a row, and it was correct 4 times in a row. It just happens sometimes. So don't Jedi mind trick yourself into picking some wrong answer and overworking it or over fixing something that's not broken. If you think it's A, it's A. Grab it and move on. All right, folks. Nicely done. Let's take a look at question number 2. I'm going to give you 30 seconds to read and answer it. See you folks in half a minute. Good luck and enjoy the practice. All right, folks, let's go ahead and review. So here we had something called a parenthetical element. And if you don't know what that is, well, neither do most people who take the PSAT, except that you are going to know on test day, so that's the important thing. This thing that I have highlighted in peach does not need to be there. If you block it off, notice what happens. Unlike a ballet choreographer, a modern dance choreographer will often set the movements and perform. Yeah, the sentence works just fine without that stuff. So when you have non-essential stuff inserted into a sentence on the PSAT, there's 3 different options for doing it. Option 1, pair of commas. Option 2, pair of parentheses. Then you got finally option 3, which is a pair of dashes. And that's it. This question was actually, Murder on the Orient Express. It was a really tricky one. People were all over the place here. But if you just notice that much, then you're good to go. Because which choices can we eliminate for not giving us any of the 3 valid ways of inserting non-essential information into the sentence? Nicely done here, folks. Choice B has a space and then a comma. We need a pair of commas, not just one. Choice C and choice D both do a comma semicolon combo, flipping where the semicolon goes. Yeah, look, semicolons connect 2 complete sentences. They don't do whatever the heck C and D are doing. With a semicolon, as we shall see in a moment on a future question, semicolons are like periods. Like if you understand how a period works, a semicolon works the exact same way. There needs to be a complete sentence on both sides of it. So it can't be choice C or choice D. Again, it's no change. Oh no, it's no change 2 times in a row. Who cares? It's just a choice. It's just one of the four choices. There's a 1 in 16 chance that A will be correct 2 times in a row. It's not that small of a chance when you consider that there are, a lot more than 16 questions on the PSAT. So grab A confidently, don't second guess it, and move on with the PSAT. All right, time for number 3, semicolons. I'm going to give you half a minute. Good luck. If you'd be so kind, David, please give us a poll for the third question here. And when time is up, we're going to review it. Good luck and enjoy the practice. All right, folks, let's go ahead and review question number the third. So here we have choices that are all the same words in all the same order, and the only thing changing is the punctuation mark. So let's review our punctuation rules. The way that a semicolon works is that there needs to be a complete sentence on both sides of it. So let's check the first part of the sentence. I just bracketed in blue everything leading up to the semicolon. Let me know in the chat, folks. Is that a complete sentence? It's not. It is not a complete sentence. Though classical ballet, that's not going to be a complete thought. So we're going to need to get rid of choice A. You need to have a complete sentence on both sides of a semicolon for that to be right. Now let me know in the chat, folks, if a semicolon isn't going to work here. As I see a lot of you guest army, Kavya, very good. Noted. Which other answer choices can we eliminate too? Which other answer choices or choice also don't work because for basically the same reason that the semicolon's not going to fly. Well, remember, semicolons and periods are about the same thing, so we can cross off C because that would put a period at the end of a sentence fragment, and there's no way that that's going to be the correct answer on test day, so we're going to get rid of choice C. Now, you might have been torn about choice D, so let's do a quick recap on how colons work if you're not familiar. The way it works is like this. You need to have a complete sentence, then a colon, and then like thing being emphasized or introduced. So the key thing for this question is this rule that a lot of people don't know, which now you know, so now you can use it to great effect on test day, which is that what comes before a colon needs to be a complete sentence. It has to be complete. If it's not complete, no matter how good the colon sounds, it's going to be wrong. And so here, actually, the exact same reason eliminates all the wrong answers. A, C, and D are all wrong for the same reason, which is that whatever comes before the punctuation mark is not a complete sentence, and A, C, D all give you things that cannot come after an incomplete sentence. So just like that, we're going to go ahead and grab choice B for Boris, finally, and move on with the PSAT. All right, folks, let's see if we can sneak in one more question here. If you'd be so kind, I'm going to give you 30 seconds. Try this one. And when time is up, we're going to review it. I'll see you folks in half a minute for our final question of the day. Enjoy. All right, folks, let's go ahead and review question number 4. This one has dropping punctuation mark dramatically, which is a little bit weird, but don't let the test makers bamboozle you into thinking something difficult's going on. Just use your rules. Choice B is a period. It needs to have a complete sentence before it and a complete sentence after it. I hate to tell you this, but dramatically is not a complete sentence, so B is gone. Choice D, if you know the rule that a semicolon needs to be followed by and preceded by a complete sentence, you know it can't be that, because dramatically is not a complete sentence. Now, do we use a comma or do we use a dash? And the thing is that a comma is not going to work here, because if you're going to use a comma like that, there would need to be like an entire phrase, not just a single word. What's happening is that dramatically is an emphasized word. It's emphasized by the stuff that came before. You can use a dash to introduce it, but not a comma. So C needs to go. We're going to grab choice A for awesome yet again. We're getting lots of practice picking choice A, no change, and move on with the PSAT. All right, folks. Fantastic job today in this lesson. We really appreciated having you here. For us, it's just fun. For you, it's a decent chunk out of your Sunday. So thank you so much for giving us your time. We hope that you found it useful and worthwhile. I wish you all the best of luck on the PSAT and frankly beyond, because there's a lot more that you have to do after the PSAT is over. There's the SAT or ACT, there's college apps, there's applying to college, there's going to college, there's lots of stuff ahead. So it's kind of like the first little step of a very large journey, and I wish you all the best in that. So good luck out there, take care, and we'll stick around for a couple minutes if you have any questions. Have a great day, everybody.